Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Near Memo featuring our very special guest, the illustrious, the incomparable Barry Schwartz. This is episode 94, if you're counting, and our final one for the year of 2022. So welcome, Barry. It's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So just tell the folks a little tiny bit about who you are. Everybody and their brother knows you, obviously, but just give us some context for all the authoritative commentary that you're going to offer for the rest of the half hour here.
I'm probably the biggest SEO content spammer that you know on the planet. I write a lot about SEO often, and it just goes out there and people consume it, like it or not. They have to consume it. But it's a lot easier now to consume because now we don't have those authorship icons in the search results where it had my face everywhere. So much more consumable now that my face is not attached to every single piece of content. So I shouldn't be too sarcastic on this blog post, but I've been writing about search since I was like 22 or something. Like I started like almost 20 years ago. So about half my life I've been writing about search, mostly on the organic algorithm, SEO, core links types of stuff side, both at Search Engine Roundtable, which I started in 2003, and Search Engine Watch with you, Greg, and Search Engine Land. We all exiled from that site to the new site at Search Engine Land for many, many years, and I'm still there. I tend to not stop doing what I do. I just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and keep adding on to it. So I've been writing about search for a long time with a core focus on mostly organic Google stuff, but I write a lot about local. I cover some ad stuff, and I've been doing that for a long time, including testing out stuff with Google search and seeing how it works myself. So, and I know you guys for a really long time, of course. I've interviewed you both on my vlog. So thanks for having me on your, podcast as well.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit before we get into algorithm discussion. You're kind of like a librarian, sort of archiving all of Google's algorithmic history and other related stuff on your blog and on Search Engine Land to a lesser degree. But let's talk a little bit about Google's sort of UI UX history, because I think you have an interesting perspective on that. What would you say if you had to point to one or two things that represent sort of the most significant changes or evolution of Google search over time? What would you say those things are?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint in a couple. I mean, I've been covering every single change that Google made to the user interface pixel by pixel for so many years. But I guess I'd say looking back at the years, the one thing that got me onto NBC News, my first time on NBC, was when Google changed the search results to what they call universal search, where they incorporated more things than just 10 blue links. They incorporated images, videos, local, and that was a huge deal. It changed everything from just having 10 blue web pages ranking in Google search results to now you could get images in Google search, you could get local results, and it really changed things a lot. Now where we have these TikTok videos kind of streaming into our Google search results, it's kind of gotten a lot these days. Now the shopping interfaces is insane. But I think that was probably the biggest fundamental change, if I have to say, in terms of the user interface with Google search in the past 20 years. Maybe people would argue with me, but I think that's probably one of the bigger ones.
What year was that? Do you remember? Roughly?
Can I cheat? Probably about 10 plus years ago.
Yeah, I was going to guess 2009, 8 or 9.
2007.
Oh, I was way off.
May 2007.
Well, so we were talking last in our last podcast about Google's. We were debating rather because there wasn't unanimity about whether Google's interface now has become kind of too cluttered, too crowded. Where do you come down on that?
Yes, I mean, first and foremost, it's the ads. So it's hard to get search results without ads. but it depends on what you're searching for. So a lot of people just click on the ads and people are paying for it, so it probably works out well. But I think Google really does try hard to show the search results in the interface that the searcher wants. So if it's a local query, they'll probably show the map results at the top. If it's something that people are searching for videos, they might show, short videos or long videos, depending on what it was. So I think all these things provide opportunities. I know a lot of SEOs complain that, Google's like doing this or changing this, or these are all opportunities where maybe, if you go ahead and figure out a way to get, your short videos at the top as the search results, or get your 3D imagery, in the search results, those are opportunities that maybe other SEOs can't compete with, and you could go ahead and do that. So I look at all these challenges more as opportunities, if that makes sense, as opposed to like just complaining that Google's stuffing up the search results, because ultimately, if the searcher becomes really unhappy, I know there's a monopoly issue, but I think ultimately if the searchers become really unhappy, they will go to a different search engine. Specifically, they'll go to DuckDuckGo because it's cute. That was sarcasm again. But.
Yeah.
So you think the new interface at the top to disambiguate or allow other related queries is helping the result, or just making it more crowded?
No, I think I think Google thinks that it's helping people find what they're looking for faster, because people tend to like those buttons. You can scroll and you can click on something, and then it does another filter, and it obviously keeps people on the search results page a little bit longer. But I do think Google wouldn't have launched it unless it thought that it was helping searchers. And I think it's possible that they'll find out in 3 months from now, 6 months from a year from now, that it's not working as well as they wanted based on the data. And they might try something else. Google, one thing Google's not afraid of is, really dealing with change. They're constantly changing stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. At the same time, sometimes those changes upset a lot of people.
Sometimes those changes happen faster than businesses can adapt, or maybe they try to adapt to it and then they're left without something. So there are real world implications to Google's
100%
build fast and break fast kind of philosophy.
So let's talk with that. Let's talk about the different algorithm updates, because they're, even though you said earlier to me in a private conversation, there have been 10 major algorithm updates in 2021 and 10 this year, according to the official Google page that chronicles them. Let's just talk a little bit about them, right? So there's helpful content update, there's core updates, there's spam updates, and product reviews updates. And then in our kind of world, the review spam algorithm update that Mike has been talking about, that we've been talking about quite a bit. So among these, in your estimation, Barry, what is the most impactful? What is the most important of these updates? Is it the HCU, the helpful content update?
I think Google thinks so. I think Google thinks the helpful content update is the most important one. Maybe in the future. Right now, from what I'm seeing in terms of impactful, like the ones that actually shift the search results around, the ones that cause the most amount of what I call chatter in the SEO industry, where people are seeing their rankings go up and down and change for better or worse. I think those tend to be the core updates. Even I think if I have to rank the updates in terms of how impactful they are, it would be core update, product reviews update, then maybe like the spam updates, not so much the link spam update, and then maybe the helpful content update. It's just not as widespread as we thought it would be. And even though the helpful content update is now global, the first release was just English results, but now it's actually touching every single language. You think it would be more impactful. They launched it a week ago or so. I'm not sure if we should date these things, but I think it was launched on December 5th.
In December,
and and it takes 2 weeks to roll out, so it's not fully rolled out yet. But I do think Google thinks that would have been a bigger rollout, because they got very defensive when they said, "Hey, this seems pretty minor because people aren't complaining as much and the tools aren't picking up on it as much." But I know from speaking to a bunch of Google engineers that this helpful content update is something that they really, really are passionate about, and they think it's going to make a big difference in terms of search quality with Google.
Well, so let's talk about why it exists. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion of the helpful content update by a lot of SEOs, but what, just to sort of, for purposes of this discussion, why is Google adding this algorithm update to the others, which address spam, which address core issues and rebalancing of the different variables. Product reviews is kind of like the helpful content update, but why does Google feel like it needs this in your opinion?
Yeah. So I think Google's pretty, I mean, they keep saying like write content for people, not for search engines. And I think what you see, and it kind of reminds me of the Panda days back in 2011, where Google was getting a lot of bad press about how the search results were just kind of sending you in a loop. You would go to a search result, type something in, a page would come up, you would click on it, and then there'd be a bunch of ads going back to the search results, kind of like this arbitrage situation with AdSense and so forth. And I think you kind of see a lot of people complaining that the search results aren't they're kind of like ranking well, things are ranking well, and they're kind of on the topic, but they're not really helping me. They're just sending me to read more about other stuff where they can sign up for something. Where I think Google was going with this helpful content update is to really say, why was this piece of content written? Was it written just to rank well in search? Is your SEO company just writing this to try to get it to rank well? As opposed to you actually writing something with the intent to actually help somebody. When I interviewed, I can't pronounce his official name, but he goes under H.J. Kim. He's like the VP of search, is really in charge of this helpful content update, the core updates, even the past Panda updates. He's in charge of core ranking at Google Search. He was super passionate about this update. He's like, talking about when his father had some condition, and he was super nervous when he was doing searches. He wanted to find resources to actually help his father get through this time. Either, what are the chances of him living? What could he do for therapy? And he kind of like took that internally to say, what could I do to make the algorithm better? What could my impact be to other people who are maybe going to the search results page, searching for their most sensitive, their most meaningful types of search queries, health, your money, your life, your money, your life topic, but beyond that, to make sure those results are actually trustworthy and helpful and stuff like that. So I think that's their goal there. And it's two-pronged. One is not just that search results become better, is also to encourage us content creators and people who are creating content on the internet to actually make the content better. The EAT concept, so that Google has more content to rank better, and it's much more competitive now. Usually in the old days, I could outrank H&R Block during tax season for their own name. Now it's much harder. I mean, now they have so much selection to choose from. Their algorithms can be very, very picky, and I think they know that, and they're going ahead and saying, all right, we are being even pickier. The bar is much harder right now, and I think that's their goal. Is two-pronged. One is to not get anybody in danger with the search results, give them a really, really good experience, and then to create incentive for content creators to create better stuff.
So I fortunately am healthy, don't do a lot of health-related searches. I do a lot of recipe-related searches, and they suck. I mean, recipes on Google are the worst.
Recipe blogs suck.
Recipes suck because there's 27 pages of bloviated content before you actually get to the recipe. So I'm waiting for the recipe. It's called REAT or whatever, recipe eat update.
Well, you're talking. So this is a good example of something. Sorry to cut you off, Barry, but this is a good example of something. This is one of my pet peeves as well. You're really talking about blogs that house recipes, right? That Google features at the top of the page. You're not talking about a rich result that might have a recipe, which you really don't see that much. But
it might be a rich result. It might be a carousel, recipe carousel.
But
all those things, but they all take you to the same.
Well, so recipe blogs are infamous for being bloated, right? It's like You want the recipe for chicken tikka masala or potato latkes or whatever it is, and what you get is 10,000 words of somebody telling their life story, the history of lemons, and Barry
and a button that says "Go to recipe," and you get taken to an ad.
Well, no, jump to recipe buttons are really useful now, and more of those blogs have them on there. But
they don't work. They take you to the ad just above the recipe.
You've got like 15 tile ads and autoplay videos on these blogs. Okay, so the reason that these blogs are the way they are is because of SEO and because of ads.
Not necessarily, the ads, but so my perception of the helpful content update was it was supposed to hit sites that are doing this kind of thing.
Indeed,
the case?
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. But the reason that those recipe blogs have become so bloated like that is because they're trying to get people to scroll through a whole bunch of ads. They're trying to create ad inventory, and they're trying to rank. It's a cynical content strategy, and this is pervasive. It's pervasive. Google's helpful content update is is idealistic, right? It's like we want people to write these great pieces of content that are going to be genuinely useful to people, and that's great, that's worthy. But the SEO mentality, whether you're a digital marketer or whether you're just a random business, is pervasive. People know that you need to do certain things to rank. I mean, this is what the business keyword stuffing in business names is all about. You've got small businesses. I mean, they've been doing that since the Yellow Pages, but that's what business name keyword stuffing is about. It's like trying to game the algorithm or rank better. And so this mentality, whether you like it or not, is pervasive, and Google is never going to overcome that mentality. Whatever they
they're
do.
Chipping away at it. I think they're chipping away at it here. I don't write content with the aim of
you're
how
different.
can I go ahead and
you're different, Barry. You're different.
But I rank well. I mean, I write content that I think people would find useful, and I think ultimately, I think Google rewards that. And the recipe side, it's harder. I mean, there's great examples. Like, I mean, I don't need to know this person's life story when I'm reading a recipe. Not that I read recipes. No offense to people who read recipes. I just don't. But I do agree. I do agree that's a good example. And I don't think it's in the realm of like these topics on recipes are going to be like critical. It's not like you're going to go ahead and like read an article and like potentially eat like a poisonous mushroom or something and die, or you'll eat some magical, mystical piece of lettuce, and then you go ahead and put all your money into Bitcoin and lose it all. It's not like that. So I think they'll get there. I think the concept of core updates and EAT and then YMYL, I think one thing I learned from Google again is that EAT is not only on the side of YMYL categories, but it's been expanding. When I first wrote about wasn't called the core update, but we saw like these Google updates that Google wouldn't confirm, and I called one of them the medic update. And then everybody's like, and Google's like, it doesn't just target medical stuff. I'm like, okay, but it seems like it's really hitting medical stuff. And then eventually they came out with this EAT and YMYL and calling them core updates. Clearly, Google focuses more on medical related topics, health and fitness. A lot of financial sites were hit by that too, but it was very interesting to see Google kind of admit to that. And again, Google focuses their algorithms that are focused around making sure content is trustworthy, specifically when those topics are more sensitive in nature in terms of medical and financial, and that can actually hurt you. So if you're baking brownies and they come out a little bit bad because somebody told you a life story and you got bored reading halfway through, I don't think it's that important. But eventually, I think it will get there.
Well,
it should get there. I agree with you.
Medical is almost a unique category because Google did a bunch of content partnerships for medical that I don't think they've done in any other category, like with the Mayo Clinic and a bunch of others that were really highly trusted sources of information. They actually were licensing content.
There's still, it's not a past tense. There are
still
medical knowledge panels everywhere. As someone who works with a couple of large healthcare providers.
Right. So that's almost a unique case because they're not licensing. I mean, they may be licensing isolated content, but you don't see it consistently in the search results in the same way. So let's briefly sort of distinguish. And again, there's been a lot of writing about this. Lily Ray in particular has written a lot about EAT. Let's distinguish helpful content update and EAT. So you and I, Barry, I used the word algorithm very loosely this morning, and you kind of spanked me about that. EAT is not an algorithm. It's a something for quality raters to consider in rating websites. Talk a little bit about that and what the distinction is with helpful content update.
Right. All right. Just some breaking news. EAT has added another E to it. So now it stands for EEAT or double EAT. And it's expertise. It's experience now, expertise, A for authoritativeness, and then trustworthiness. These are the things that Google tells their quality raters, which are third-party contractors, not hired directly by Google, but they hire a company who hires people all around the world to say, here's a set of search results. I want you to rate how good these search results are based on our guidelines, which is this 170-plus page PDF document that tells these quality raters what Google defines as being good search results and bad search results. And part of that is this whole concept around EEAT, which goes through what people should expect, what Google expects from the search results based on their algorithms. So what the search quality raters guidelines is that guidelines that they give to these quality raters to go ahead and rate both test subjects, test search results, like experimental search results that Google's testing, as well as the live search results, so that Google, that feedback, those ratings can then go back to the Google engineers to tell Google, hey, your algorithms are working, or they're not working, or they're not working in these cases, or they are working in those cases, and they go ahead and make adjustments or come out with new algorithm updates, like the core updates, like the updates to those, like the helpful content update, like the product reviews update and spam updates, to go ahead and try to make their algorithms better.
So the EAT is in a way an input into everything, but really in particular the helpful content update. Yeah.
Is EAT specifically to what? I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm saying is EAT is an input that helps engineers adjust the algorithms, adjust it helps them.
It's not really an input. It's just an acronym they use. I mean, if you go through it, I mean,
no. What I'm saying is that it influences their thinking about the algorithms. Is that incorrect?
Yeah, I think if you understand EAT, those concepts are probably the things they think about when they go ahead and write these algorithms for rankings or whatever AI or whatever inputs they have.
So, okay, I cut you off. You were not finished with your explanation.
I mean that's the core concept. Again, I don't think a lot of SEOs, especially new SEOs, confuse like, there's an EAT score or a helpful content score, or something like that. It doesn't work like that. There are no scores for those types of things. It's more around, these are the things that Google, this is a way Google could actually communicate this to their raters, which again is now public to everybody. Or initially the raters guidelines were not public. They were hidden behind some type of corporate like intranet. And eventually they got leaked so many times that Google made it public. But again, it's a great thing that Google released it. I remember when one day it was actually released, it was leaked by somebody, and I was at a PubCon. I was walking somewhere with Matt Cutts, I guess from some event to the hotel or whatever. And I'm like, why don't you just release this document? All it tells you to do is write how to write content that Google likes, that Google wants to rank. How is that going to hurt you? It's not like any secrets are there. It's just like, write better content. And then goes through examples of bad content and good content. So eventually they released it. And
it was because of you, Barry. It was because of that conversation.
Yeah, I take full credit for that. And when they banned your site, I was like, I pressed that button. No, I'm sure. Whoever's listening. But yeah, I agree. I think it's that's the reason behind these updates. But again, it's not like Google will pump in EAT scores or like say, there's a lot of confusion around what the signals are to make up for what is EEAT and what is not, and how does Google come up with that? And then there's the whole debate in the SEO community about, does Google care about this stuff, or is it just quality raters? Should we care if our content's authoritative? Do I have to have a doctor write about, why I have this rash on my, arm or something like that? These are the types of things that is very confusing, and it's intentionally confusing because there's, explaining how algorithms work or AI works is super confusing, and Google doesn't want to spill the beans either. So it used to be much more linear when it came to these updates, especially when like keyword density and links. It used to be super linear. Like, I just need a bunch of links with some keywords on the page and it would be good.
Do you think most of these updates are driven by an AI model? I mean, that they pump in examples of good, examples of bad, and then figure out the rules and then test it? I mean, do you think it's it's likely a probabilistic AI model in a lot of these updates? At least that seems to be the case in the local review update, which didn't get a lot of press at the time. But
I think some are and some aren't. I think Google's way more into the AI than they were even 2-3 years ago. Initially, when I spoke to a bunch of Google engineers, kind of like off the record-ish, but it wasn't like, it was basically them saying, we can't have the AI control us. We need to be on top of the AI. We have to use AI in specific cases so that if something goes wrong, we could decouple it and figure out what went wrong. I'm not sure how much that case is today. I mean, this is several years later, and I think AI has become a lot more confident. But I know when you spoke to Microsoft Bing, they're like, everything is AI. And Google's like, we're not going to say that. Everything is definitely not AI. And then they have very specific cases. They have product reviews, they have helpful content, they have core updates. They have lots of signals within each one. Some of them may be AI focused, some of them may not. And then the question is, what inputs are they putting in there? Are they putting in dwell time and click-through rate and stuff like that? And Google says, no, we don't use those factors. Do you use Chrome data? Do you use Google Analytics data? Are you watching us in this camera right now to see where our eyes are going? And there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and rightfully so, because it's very secretive. So,
I think that AI is sort of inevitably a bigger and bigger piece of Google's algorithms. I mean, I just think that they've signaled that publicly in different ways, and I think just this is the direction that the industry is clearly moving.
Where Google I see it in local is in image moderation in local posts and review images. I see what clearly, and I see it making dumbass mistakes, in its probabilistic model, mistaking my bare arms as some sexual reference, God forbid.
Well, you do have sexy arms, Mike.
I
can't be disputed.
Careful, this is a PG podcast. We can't.
Yes, we're going to have our podcast will be banned because of that oblique reference to as they say on TikTok, segs. They say segs on TikTok to avoid them.
And in reviews, and part of my theory is that it's cheap to use those AI tools for moderation, but that there's a lot of false positives, and the effort has yet to be made to reduce those false positives to bearable numbers. And they haven't provided mechanisms for users to go and dispute these results. For example, in images, it just gets rejected. There's no way to get that image reused, even if it's harmless. Or with reviews, they are actually providing a mechanism, kind of an obtuse one, but there I'm finding 75-80% of the applications are being accepted, which again tells me there's a lot of false positives, and people are impacted by those. So
the interesting thing there in that example, which might not be true in general search results, is that nobody really notices. The businesses clearly notice, and the businesses are impacted, but the consumer experience is arguably not impacted. Maybe it would be for the better if there were better quality photos, or certain reviews were not removed from the corpus or whatever. But there's a bright line really between the B2B experience and the consumer experience that the consumers are not noticing. Whereas I think Google, there's been, in the wake of the popularity of ChatGPT, people are saying, hey, why isn't Google releasing Lambda, and where's Google's, AI bot and all of that? And Google, I forget whether this was a sort of public comment. I guess it's sort of a public comment. Google was saying
that they comment.
that they want to be very cautious. To your point, Barry, they want to be very cautious about kind of letting AI out of the barn too much, because they fear reputational harm. They fear that, Google has a lot at stake. It's this arbiter of quality on the web, and people generally trust Google. And so they don't want to screw that up. And so they're being cautious.
If I remember, actually, it was a public comment in a Google employee all hands meeting or something like that.
Okay.
That an employee had asked the question, hey, why are we falling behind? Yeah.
Quasi-public comment.
It's funny. It's funny how Google constantly says that. It's like, one is they want people to know that search is not perfect, AI is not perfect, and they're making improvements every day. There's a lot to improve, and they keep saying that because they keep saying also they're not the source of truth. They're just a search engine, and they try to provide quality search results that help people make decisions by themselves. So they keep saying those type two things over and over again to kind of save their butt. And I get it because there's so many queries. There's like they say 15% of all queries they haven't seen before on a daily basis. Still is crazy to think about. But if you haven't seen search results and you don't know how they're going to rank, you can't say this is always going to be the truth. I have used Chat AI to apologize to my wife, to write poems for my father's birthday. It's great. I mean, it really helps me be more social and be more human, which is great.
The problem, though, with search results are becoming, there's a greater need for truth, both in the news and in local, particularly, where it's always been this conflict between what's true in the real world versus what's relevant to Google. And Google has never quite resolved that conflict in local. And it's becoming more, I think, more salient as we move and to, what is really true? Are these reviews true? Are these businesses really here?
Truth. That's a philosophical question, Mike. I don't think
it is. But
is there objective truth?
Existence of businesses isn't a philosophical question. It's an objective reality.
Oh, sure.
Are we real? Are we here right now talking? I don't know.
This is a simulation, actually, Barry, I think. This is an AI simulation of our identities.
That haircut, your hair is obviously not real. There's no way a person like your stature to have such good hair.
Stature? Don't you mean age? Well, so let's talk about overall. Let's talk about the Freakonomics thing, which is people have been asking for the last 2 years and maybe the last 10 years. What's happening to Google? Google's results are deteriorating. There've been a lot of complaints over time, but it seems like it's reached a kind of crescendo recently, and that sort of was expressed in a Freakonomics podcast in which the central question was, is Google getting worse? Which prompted me to do a poll on LinkedIn and on Twitter, which you retweeted, Barry, to gain some additional exposure. And the results basically show, the question is Google getting worse? Marissa Mayer, a former Google employee, former CEO of Yahoo, said, it's not Google, it's the web. The web has gotten more spammy. And so Google is merely mirroring that in its search results. And she was very much an apologist for Google. The polls that I ran show an equal split between people who think Google is getting worse and the web is getting worse, right? And this goes to all these algorithm updates and what Google's trying to stay ahead of all the sort of cynical content and SEO chum, as some people like to call it. But where do you come down on this? Who's responsible? Is it the web? Is it Google? Are people completely off base with these perceptions? Because they're pretty widespread these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure why. I mean, again, I'm too in the weeds with search and Google that I don't know if Google search is worse than it was. I can't imagine. That seems like crazy. I mean, Google search
it's much more
really
sophisticated.
10, 15 years ago.
It's much more sophisticated on the back end than it used to be, for sure.
Yeah. I think the results are better. I mean, I think like it used to be. You all remember searching back in the old days. Today is actually Alta Vista's 27th birthday, so you all remember searching in Alta Vista and getting garbage. So I mean, comparing it to 27 years ago, it's way better. Comparing it to maybe 5 years ago, I still think it's better. Maybe the interface is kind of annoying, but I still think the search results are better. But that being aside, the whole concept of, is it Google's fault the search results are bad because they have bad algorithms? Or is the stuff that they're trying to rank and the content on the internet in general is just, there's so much stuff out there that's just bad. And
well, I think that's,
I don't know if
Barry, I think that's a very astute point I disagree with Marissa that the web is a spammier place today. I think on balance, that's probably that there's more good content out there than there was in the first Alta Vista days. But the sheer volume of stuff that Google has to evaluate is or chooses to evaluate is much bigger. And Greg, you've said this on a few podcasts, like, is there a place for a much more highly curated search engine or segment of Google
or even
simply takes a smaller slice of the web and returns a smaller set of results?
Yeah, nobody cares about the size of the index anymore. That's completely irrelevant. They want sort of more trustworthy, fewer trustworthy choices, I think.
I think the other big issue here is that Google, now being the hegemon, now being at the top of the heap, is a much bigger target and a more likely target for almost any company in the United States. And I think that reflects a shift in PR, a problem that Google has in terms of maintaining their image, the likelihood that stories about their decline or failure or antitrust behaviors are more likely to appear, that they've lost, that the sort of, the colors off the rose, as it were. And I think they're much more susceptible to negative PR than they were in the past, which is a different question, but related, because these articles are more likely to show and get through editorial approval. That's right.
So you think that the perception that Google has declined in quality, or the search results have declined in quality, is partly a PR related phenomenon. People are being shaped by the narrative, which has turned negative against Google.
Yes, I do. I think local results, despite my many complaints, are actually better than they have been, and Google is doing a reasonable job. Not perfect, but reasonable, and the only company that's doing so.
Surprised to hear that.
Yeah,
from an Apple fanboy, the only company that's doing so. Oh my God!
Well, I think Apple's efforts in local are lame, and they have not risen to the need. I mean, I think their navigational stuff is great. I use it all the time. But I don't think I would trust a restaurant recommendation there.
So let's to kind of close out our discussion. I mean, there are many topics that we haven't really touched on that are interesting. But to close out the discussion, we've sort of talked so far about how Google is trying to stay ahead of spam content, low quality content, improve the user experience in various ways. So obviously, ChatGPT is kind of the shiny new object for everybody. Very popular topic of discussion. A lot of people speculating about how it's going to impact Google.
I'm curious how it's going to impact Search Engine Roundtable.
It'll be writing all of Barry's content before
Barry.
July.
Is GPT only restricted to apologies to your wife, or do you plan, or are you currently using it to write some of your coverage?
I used it for my video intro on my last weekly video. I do a Friday video. So I'm like, let's use it for my intro. It was pretty funny. And it's funny because then I saw who's MPKHD, the Marquez Brown guy who does the big reviews on YouTube. He did the same thing, but he did it way better than I can. He's a great vlogger. Anyway, I haven't used it to write any content. I don't plan on it. I could probably write content faster than I could do. Make the right content. It just takes forever to go.
That would not surprise me. I've seen you typing at conferences before. Yeah.
He's been writing a blog post right now as he's been talking to us.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's two dimensions to this. One is, does ChatGPT or anything built on top of ChatGPT become a kind of Google alternative from a consumer or user standpoint? That's one question. The other question, which may be more relevant to this discussion, is how does Google deal with what promises to be a lot of content that is AI driven, AI assisted, human edited, but first draft is AI. I mean, I think that's inevitable. Jasper has been around. There's a lot more people, already there are tons and tons of videos and little, LinkedIn posts about all the use cases for ChatGPT and AI for marketers. So what are your thoughts on either or both of those, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, so the first one, I think you'll just see over time how people adapt and go towards which area for which purposes. We'll see. I mean, again, it's not hard for Google they have so much technology on the AI side. Like you said, they're just being more careful about it. So if it becomes an issue, Google has technology that's way better than anything you're using with a ChatGPT. Because again, the only reason people are using it is because it's so accessible. If Google made their AI technologies like a chat box, you just type it in and they could do that in 5 seconds. It's not a big deal. And their stuff is probably way better. They have probably way more content to train stuff than.
That's the rumor. Yeah. Yep.
So we'll see what happens with that. I don't think it's a big concern for Google. I know a lot of the financial sites are like Google's dead. You got to sell your stock and stuff like that. But I'm not sure. This is not a financial advice blog or a vlog. Don't sell your Google stock or don't buy Google stock based on what we're saying here.
But you can sell your Tesla stock, right? Though. Sell your Tesla stock.
You got to be careful. See, NBC just had an article about these influencers actually getting sued millions and millions of dollars for saying.
Well, that was a pump. Stocks. That was a pump and dump scheme. There's no such thing going on. I
thought this was a pump and dump scheme. This whole thing was a pump and dump scheme.
I don't own any individual stocks, so I can't be accused of doing that. But go ahead. Back to the AI issue.
In terms of the AI for building content, that was this. I mean, the helpful content update, I think, is specifically that. I think it's because a lot of people are building content using machine scrapers, low tech AI, and some people are using higher tech AI. There are ways. Personally, I don't want anybody. I want to write my content myself. That's the way I am. But a lot of people write content with the aid of using AI. Like they could supplement that stuff. Either they could start the content using the AI and
listicles, for example,
or they could have the whole thing written and then they could have the human go in there and modify it to make it make more sense. Like if I'm not good at writing poems, and I was tasked to write a poem for my father, and I'm like, all right, let me try ChatGPT and let me try Google, and I found a bunch Google, show me a bunch of poems for your father's expert day. And it gave me a whole list of stuff. And I ultimately went with a poem, and I adapted a poem that I found on Google because I can't write poems. I can write boring content that SEOs want to read. So I think ultimately you'll see a mixture of people using that to create content and adapt it. I don't think Google's going to rank that. If the AI can write it, the AI to figure out if it's written by AI, I think can figure it out. So I think people have to be careful with that.
Well, so Google explicitly prohibits automatic content, right? I forget their magic language, but it's basically this is in its webmaster guidelines. You're not supposed to use AI to create content, but the gray area, and I think John Mueller talked about this a little bit in one of his blogs or podcasts. The gray area is human edited AI. So AI as a foundation, then a human comes in and modifies it. Google doesn't prohibit that kind of scenario, I don't think. And that's what we're like.
Yeah, I think John Mueller specifically has said this a lot. He's been talking about it over the years. He said at one point AI might write better than anybody else. And in that case, it is what it is. I mean, why shouldn't content that's really doing really well?
If the user prefers it.
Right. I mean, if you're, and then there's going to be AI video. There's going to be an explosion of AI created video that already. But I think Danny Sullivan recently said, with the helpful content of Danny Sullivan specifically said in the line he wrote, he basically said, content written by the people for the people. I mean, that's pretty strong. So will that change in the future? Possibly. But right now, I guess Google's saying, you know what? We want to have people that have the experience. Can AI have experience with, I don't know, putting a bandage on or making a splint for your broken arm or something like that? Probably not.
We're back to Mike's sexy arms already, huh? Jeez.
So it's a good question, and we'll see. But I know a lot of SEOs are using a lot of AI. Cheaply.
And I think that the strategy of generating tons of content cheaply and quickly will be a favorite strategy among many SEOs and people creating landing pages and other kinds of website content, because it reduces costs. The promise of AI is you can do stuff quickly, pretty credibly or competently, and it's really cheap, cheaper than hiring humans. I mean, machines will always win when you can replace a human with a machine, unfortunately.
Right. It's funny because I own a software company. We do have a bunch of programmers. So I posted I asked ChatGPT to show me a PHP script to do, I don't know, X, Y, and Z. And it gave me the script, and I copied and pasted it. And it's like, I don't need you guys anymore. I'm going to fire all my programmers. I'm going to have the AI build all my code for me. Obviously, it's a joke because you need to have somebody who understands the business logic to build the tools that know what they're doing so that you can just use scripts here and there. But ultimately, one day, will it get better? I mean,
people are already generating code with ChatGPT. I mean, a lot of it is kind of novelty, like, can it do this? Can it do that? But for sure, I mean, a lot of the code that is the basis for future applications and websites will be generated by AI. That's for sure.
We'll be in a much better world if AI ran everything and we had less people with less emotions dealing with problems. Emotions are the root of all evil.
All right. Well, so Barry, you've spent a lot of time with us. I want to thank you for that. We're at 42 minutes approximately. And so that's longer than we normally go, but there's been a lot of stuff to talk about. We didn't talk about, competition. We didn't talk about antitrust. These were topics that we sort of discussed a little bit in the green room. So we'll have you back in a future episode to go into things in more detail.
Thanks for having me. And I'm sorry that it went so long, but you could always shorten it up with AI tools.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Subscribe to the newsletter. Barry, wouldn't you tell everybody to subscribe to the Near Media newsletter?
Subscribe to the Near Memo Media, right? Near Memo Media?
No, this is the Near Memo, the Near Media newsletter is what we're talking about. You're clearly not a subscriber, I think.
I am a subscriber, RSS feed. I don't like email subscriptions, but I do the RSS side. But yeah, definitely great stuff. I love your content. So definitely subscribe. Smash that like button if you have a like button. Hit the bell, and all that fun stuff, because you don't want to miss out on that content. It's written by people, for people, not by AI.
And Barry received no special consideration.
Except the threat that I wouldn't like him anymore if he didn't say nice things. All right.
I always love your content. You know that, but
yeah. Well, so thanks very much. And we will see everybody next time. Have a great holiday. Happy New Year. Relax, enjoy, have a glass of champagne if that's something that you do. If not, have a cup of tea or a hot chocolate. Whatever you do to enjoy yourself. And what is that? Diet Coke? Oh, Diet Pepsi. Product placement? Is that product placement, Barry?
Don't tell anybody.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.